Welcome to the John Villarreal Show. Now, here's John.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? It's me, John D. Villarreal, and it is another edition of the John D. Villarreal Show here on Newstalk 1040, joined by Paula Villarreal. What a crazy week. What a crazy week we have. So much stuff to talk about. It's unbelievable. So much stuff. We have so many things that we're going to talk about and we're going to get into this afternoon here on Newstalk 1040, all around the greater Tampa Bay area, okay? And anywhere from, again, Bradenton, Brandon, Sarasota, where I'm at, Longboat Key, downtown St. Pete, downtown Tampa, Clearwater, everywhere. And it's going to be great. Also live on X, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Now, here's what's funny. We had the Super Bowl yesterday. That was huge. We also had the big situation with Tucker Carlson interviewing Vladimir Putin, okay? We have all kinds of news. We have got news in Congress. We've got news on the border. We've got news overseas. But you know what's really kind of interesting? What's the one thing that you haven't heard that much about this week? I mean, you've heard a little bit about it if you've really dived into it, if you wanted to know, if you wanted to see. But what haven't you heard about this week? You really haven't heard a lot from Nikki Haley, okay? A little bit. I mean, anyone that had any kind of fantasy about Nikki Haley's going to do Trump, and it was such a bad week for the Democrats and such a great week for Trump writ large, okay? The border bill and Ukrainian funding and the whole kibosh, if you will, failed in Congress. It was another one of these, we got to pass it to find out what's in it. That was a mess. Tucker Carlson, like almost over a 2.5 hour interview with Vladimir Putin. That was intense. We had 30 plus 40 minutes, if you will, of a history lesson. Well, that was very interesting. We'll get into that. The Chiefs are the Super Bowl champs again. I mean, are we excited about that? Or, I don't know. I mean, or, and the whole Travis Kelce thing. Travis Kelce is running into Coach Andy Reid. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how. I mean, you could just see. We should have seen the cutaway to the suite with Taylor Swift. I would have loved to see that. No one even talked about that. It was just kind of brushed off. You know what I mean? Like a lot of places that would have been, but I don't know. I'm not even going to get into it. But I mean, there was physical contact there, dude. There was yelling. But I guess all's well that ends well. And that was very interesting. Very intense. Overtime Super Bowl win by the Kansas City Chiefs. A lot of people are just so tired of the whole Taylor Swift things, but you got to hand it to Patrick Mahomes at 28 years old. I mean, we won't talk about legacy. He's rapidly, etching his name all over, Canton, Ohio, in the NFL Hall of Fame, in my opinion. But really, Elon Musk with Neuralink. I mean, there's so much news. It's not even funny. But I guess we'll start with this. Ambassador Nikki Haley, Vice Presidential candidate Nikki Haley. Oh, the fundraising just got crushed in Nevada, where basically, not on the ballot or whoever, she basically got, outperformed by anybody else, if you will. And that was a huge embarrassment. Trump won the caucus. That wasn't even, I think, even a cliffhanger of any stretch. But you really just haven't heard anything. You've heard a lot of gaffes. I was getting the text from the Nikki Haley campaign. I mean, the whole thing is just imploded, very much so. And it's almost become a meme or a farce of itself. Any idea that Nikki Haley had a future in the Republican Party, electorally, I can't see it right now, not at a presidential level. I mean, who knows? So that's very interesting. And I think that campaign is effectively over. Meanwhile, we had a special counsel report by Robert Hur, who basically came out there and I guess the headline is that Biden is not competent enough to really, stand for trial. That's, I guess, my take of it. I mean, I'm not alleging anything. That's my paraphrase and my opinion of what I think that the headline was from the report. We'll get into that with Paul at Villarreal as well. Listen, if you want to call in and talk about this, talk about the Super Bowl, talk about the special counsel, talk about the presidential campaign, 727-587-1040, 727-587-1040. And we're live on X. We got a lot of friends. Paul's unveiled himself on X. And we consistently get hundreds of, sometimes thousands of views on X. So we definitely appreciate that for the show, for the John D. Villarreal radio show here. And that's cool. And so now you've got that situation. And the White House is pushing back hard on that. They're flipping out. Oh, my gosh. How can you say that? He's so in command. He's so in command. Let me tell you something about President Sisi of Mexico. What? I mean, every time this dude tries to prove that he's competent, didn't do the Super Bowl interview. Every time he tries to prove that he's competent, it's kind of slipping. And in fact, the polls, so here's some polls are saying that people are concerned about Joe Biden, President Biden. Polls are also saying the majority of Republicans want Nikki Haley to drop out. It's over, dude. It's over. We told you that. Now you're going to get crushed electorally, politically in South Carolina, and then we'll see what's what. Also, don't forget, RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel, there rumors are that she may step down around South Carolina. We'll see what happens there. But the biggest news of the week had to be not Elon Musk. Well, he was named in this interview, but the Tucker Carlson interview of President Vladimir Putin of Russia. And I think that's been viewed like maybe over 100 million times. Paul will give us the updated stats, but I mean, it was over 50 million and everyone's talking about it. And this is the thing. I mean, it's the funniest thing is, hey, how about the fastest way to get Tucker Carlson back on Fox? He did this and Fox had to cover it. Okay. And so in that interview, they covered a lot of ground and there's so much to talk about. And Paul studied it and I've studied it. And obviously I've been working a lot, but we were going to, every night I was going to come on and say something, but I guess it was good to kind of really dive into it and let it settle a little bit. This is definitely one of the things where, the Sunday shows or obviously this show here on Newstalk 1040, it's good to give a little bit of space, a little bit of breathing room to be able to really give the right kind of commentary and analysis. And as soon as that was over, I talked to Paul and we're going to bring him in here in a second. And my immediate reactions were, which I pretty much stay with, and we'll see if they evolve over the course of the show, with the history lesson. Well, first of all, I definitely felt like the ex-KGB, FSB, Vladimir Putin was absolutely in the mix right there. It almost felt like tradecraft. It definitely felt like propaganda. Was he playing Tucker? Oh, he for sure was in control of the interview. That doesn't mean that Tucker did anything wrong, and that doesn't mean that, anything like that. I think he did as well as anyone could have. And quite frankly, this wasn't a Mike Wallace, a Leslie Stahl, gotcha Reagan, this and that, whatever. I don't think it was that kind of interview. I don't know if you could have even done that kind of interview or gotten away with that, or whatever you want to call it. So I don't take any issue with that. I think that this was a chance to hear from the world leader that is on the other side of this conflict, where a bunch of different countries and are involved, implicated, affected, however you want to call that. And, just having a platform to speak. I mean, it was a more directed, more focused version of a press conference, if you will. It certainly was an interview. I'm not saying it wasn't an interview. I'm not getting to that. But what I'm saying is that there was value here. I'll get to that in a second. But the history lesson, people were like, oh, this is, maybe they were confused. Maybe they were boring. You can see Tucker Carlson getting frustrated. But I took the point, particularly and I want to be very careful what I say right here. I think it provides an interesting contrast with some of the arguments that people, even here in America, whether they are, neocons or pro-interventionists or whatever you want to say, look at those arguments for Israel, and then look at the arguments that President Vladimir Putin was laying out there in Russia. And Paul and listen, I may make a mistake here. I apologize ahead of time. I reserve the right to revise and extend my remarks, whatever. I mean, there was deep history. You could see that Tucker Carlson was in serious quicksand because, Vladimir Putin, and look at Vladimir Putin versus President Biden. Vladimir Putin was in complete control there, had a stack, had the dossier, had the intelligence file, if you will, almost. And handed it literally to Tucker Carlson and stuff like that. Just knew all this stuff and was really practiced and ready to go and in command of the facts there. And, I think Putin, I think he's 71. I think that's right. I may be wrong about that. But the history lesson was a situation where my takeaway and headline of that is borders change all the time. You have Russian people, Russians culturally aligned, Russian-speaking people all over Ukraine. You've got some Hungarians there. The borders change all these different times. Russia's been attacked and dissolved, and all these different years. And basically, this is my paraphrase, my reading into it, and potentially interpretation is, who's to say these borders are right? What about the older borders that are right there? Well, why can't we? How do I say this? I'm not phrasing this quite exactly the way I want to phrase it. But in essence, like, why are you so fixated on the borders of the last whatever? And Russia's been punked out and been snowed, on all these different agreements. And we've tried to, and remember, you're right at the doorstep. NATO's right at the doorstep of Russia. What happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis when Russia was at the doorstep of the U.S. over there in Cuba? How'd that go? I mean, we almost had, a serious confrontation. Okay. And that doesn't, and I want to like, this is political analysis here. I'm not making any excuses or any kind of, brief for Vladimir Putin or anything like that or whatnot at all. And, Putin's a tough, rough dude. No doubt about it. I'm so glad we're here in America and not over there. But I think Putin did lay out a case like, look, this, we've had it in the West, very much evolving storylines. I mean, when Mitt Romney himself said in the debate against Obama that, the Soviet Union was the 1980s called and they want their foreign policy back. Remember that? Remember all the liberals making fun of them, the memes and the BuzzFeed types and all that type of stuff. And what a difference a few years makes. And so, I think that Putin was talking about that that they've been punked out, but and this is what he was saying. I'm not saying I agree with any of it, but basically that there's been a whipsaw foreign policy, that Genghis Khan and Napoleon and World War II and all, we've had all these people invading Russia. He talked about Poland and Hungary and the different things and whatnot like that. And it just is a lot of different stuff going on there. And so the point is, some might say, I'm not saying this is me, but I'm just saying that maybe this is where he was trying. I mean, again, he was definitely working on multiple levels there. I don't want to say three-dimensional chess, whatever like that, but it was pretty clear that he came in with what he was going to talk about, what he wanted to talk about. But if we're saying that, in the Middle East, that, what it was 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 1967, 1948, whatever that it is, that's what it needs to be. Then Putin's like, well, guess what? This is what it was. And that we've been taken advantage by the West and we've been trying to partner up and trying to join the Western, stuff. And we don't want to be, and so that was the history lesson to me was, look, it's not all binary. Good and bad and easily defined and borders, that this is a bit of a mishmash here. We've got people that are very culturally aligned as Russian. We've had people that were on both sides of the conflict saying, oh, we're Russians. And he talked about that when the troops were encircled and all that type of stuff. And it's a lot more complicated than maybe the press is making it out to be. And that, there's some kind of claim there and whatever. And again, I don't think that he ever really, it was a long interview and Paul will talk about it and we're going to talk about it for a while, obviously. I don't know that it was ever cleanly answered, or at least not sure that I heard it, of why exactly they invaded Ukraine right now. What are actually the goals and how do we get out of this? I don't know that those questions were cleanly answered, but I may have just missed it. Okay. So that's the history lesson. That, maybe you're not being as logically consistent here. Maybe it's not, as binary and good and bad and clean as the story that you want to make it. And there's a lot of history here, and there's a lot of stuff going on here that the West maybe doesn't understand. Okay, that's number one. Number two point that he made is the world's changed. This isn't the 1980s anymore. This isn't Rambo. We can't just roll into everywhere in the world and just the U.S. meaning and just dictate whatever's going to go on. He talked about the BRICS. He talked about his relationship with China and Xi and all this. And this is why some people think that some people don't like Putin because he's not going along with the global or whatever they want to say. Like they're very nationalistic and then Putin's going to do what he wants to do. And they're not going in along with whatever left-wing agenda, globalist agenda, Hollywood agenda, fill in the blank. Xi's the same way. Some people thought that Xi was going to be more globalist. No, he's nationalistic, right? And Belt and Road and all that type of stuff. And that basically that you have to get ready for it. It's not, there's other people at the table now. It's not just the U.S. dictating things or UK before that or way back in the day, Spanish Armada, and, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's a very important point. I mean, just imagine if China decided to roll into Taiwan right now, what could we do? What could anyone do? That barring World War III. And, we were talking, and then also Tucker Carlson talked about, you have over 500,000 men people that have died fighting in Ukraine. Cause now I think it's elderly, it's women, it's crazy. Tremendous amount of damage and destruction. Putin, I think, said is about I can't remember, but there's hundreds of billions, maybe $1 trillion that's going to be sunk into this. And so basically, like the point is he said, I think you can't win. So we spent all this money, we're not going to win. What's the end game? So he wants the fighting to stop. He talked about that. Then we talked about like Nord Stream 2 and the pipeline, and he seemed to intimate that the U.S., maybe the CIA or something like that was involved. I don't know. That's kind of my take of it. And again, I may be mistaken here. Paul will help clean up any facts that I might be wrong on. It was a 2.5 hour interview, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head here. No notes. And he said, who has the motivation, number one, and number two, who has the capability. And he also said that there's two other ways to get, it's a pipeline or ways to get gas in there, and they haven't turned that on. This is very weird. Meanwhile, we had these protests by the farmers in, Netherlands and France and Germany and stuff. And now there's been a rollback of that. Davos looked like it was almost an apology tour, and you had President Malay over there. You got a lot of stuff going on. But the main thing is with the Putin thing, I know we're going to talk about that a lot more. What I came with, and they also talked about the Wall Street Journal reporter, and I thought that was very interesting. But the main thing I think that we walked away from, and I want to know what you guys think out there is, look, like Putin, hate Putin, believe him, don't believe him, Tucker Carlson, all didn't answer, whatever, all the criticisms, to me, it just showed how important this conversation was. Why didn't we hear from this person before? Why didn't we have other? And I take CNN and others. Oh, hey, we've had a question. I believe that. Why wouldn't they? I have no reason to not believe that. But there's been this push since the Obama years and certainly ramping up after the pandemic and stuff like, oh, misinformation, disinformation. Don't platform them. Don't normalize them. Break away from Trump. Cut Trump. Don't let him talk. This is psychotic, in my opinion. Like metaphorically speaking, right? Not literally, but like, how can you not hear from one of the biggest, the leader of one of the biggest stockpiles of nuclear weapon, who's directly involved in this war, in this proxy war that we're spending all this money? You're ready to sign up for the American people. The bill was in Congress for what, $100 billion more? And we don't at least want to kind of hear about it, have a chance at peace, talk it out. I mean, even Sauron sent the Eye of Sauron out there to treat with, Aragorn and all the rest. Like you, dude, you got to like at some point you got to get to the table and figure out what's up. Like, we don't even know. We're going off the cliff so fast, and we don't even want to stop and talk about it and think about, hey, sign the bill to see what's in it. This is craziness. So I'm glad that we had this chance to hear from him. And even if it's like, hey, you know what? Putin's crazy or whatever it is. Who knows? I mean, we need to know, the American people, we're supposed to have free speech, the land of the free, the home of the brave. What are we scared of? I mean, that's just, I wanted to give you a minute to think about that for a second, a little bit, dead air. I hope I didn't sweat anyone out there. But I mean, I wanted you to think about that. Anyone who's serious, the adults in the room and all the foreign policy experts, 2.5 hours to hear from someone that is, that could push us to World War III, the leader of that country, to know what's going on, to at least see what they think. A lot to talk about. Paul, I'm bringing you in here. We got 3 short minutes before the break. What do you think? What did you think about this? Am I right? Am I wrong? What'd you see?
Well, you and I actually didn't talk about this a lot off the air. We were going to do a discussion about it, and we didn't. But even though we didn't really confer about this, most of what you just said is a lot of the same conclusions that I came to. And let me just say this. I did like about an hour on this in a couple of different audio sessions on my Twitter. So if people want to go and check that out, they can. Look, I studied Russian history in college. I took a course on it. I very closely monitored the situation in Russia with the Ukraine conflict over the last, since 2022, since it began. I've been following this fairly closely honestly, since 2014. And I agree with John in the sense that nobody is saying that Vladimir Putin is a great guy.
Nobody's saying that.
Agree with him. No, nobody's saying that. I think there's a lot of negative things associated with Putin, in my opinion. I think he's pretty rough and tumble guy and so forth. But I agree with John in that the history aspect of this that Putin went over was fascinating. And I know a lot of the people, my followers on Twitter, were totally fascinated by this, and most of them didn't know any of this. Of course, particularly the very ancient history. But a lot of them didn't even know the more recent history since Ukraine became independent in 1991. As you said, look, we'll talk more about this after the break, but I thought it was a very important interview, the same as you felt. And I thought there was a lot of, even if everything that Putin said wasn't true, I do think there was some exaggerations, conflations, statecraft, as you were saying, propaganda. I do think a lot of what he said had truth in it. I think there were a lot of nuggets of truth in what he was saying. And it is important for people to understand, how did we get here? How did we get to this point? And you asked, did he explain exactly how we got to why this occurred in 2022?
We got to take a break. Hold that thought. I appreciate this. Appreciate you out there, Newstalk 1040 audience out there and live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and X. So much more to talk about here. You're listening to the John D. Villarreal radio show on Newstalk 1040am, and again, live on X, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Stay tuned. We'll be right back in 6 minutes to finish Paul's thought. What's up, everyone? It's me, John D. Villarreal, back. Second segment right here on Monday, the 12th. It's almost Valentine's Day. You remember that? Oh, my goodness. I've got to get things going for my wife. Holy heck. I love it. So much going on. And let me tell you something. I mean, Vladimir Putin and Tucker Carlson, I'm not sure there's a Valentine there, but Tucker Carlson did get a dossier from the ex-FSB person right there. Paul, you were talking, I don't want to be rude here. We're live. This is the John D. Villarreal radio show here on Newstalk 1040, all over the greater Tampa Bay, Florida area. Also live on X, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Paul, you're huge on X. I know you've been talking with the audience. You did you had some recordings, you had some shows, some broadcasts that you were talking about. You were in the middle of your thought. Finish that thought about the interview from Tucker Carlson and President of Russia, Vladimir Putin.
Let me just say this very quickly, John. I was just perusing something during the break. I sent it to you. It is a 2014 writing from a professor from the University of Chicago, whose name is John Mearsheimer. He is considered one of the top international relations people in his field in the world. He kind of went over this all in 2014 when things happened with Russia annexing Crimea. And basically what he said in a short version, and I haven't read his entire tract, it's about a 45-piece thing, but I know the upshot of it. He essentially said very similar things to what Vladimir Putin said in the interview with Tucker Carlson. Now, of course, that's going back to 2014. I don't know what he thinks about in 2024, although he has been, they have talked with him since then, and I think his thoughts are relatively similar. We were talking about, and you asked, did Putin explain to Tucker Carlson why he went into Ukraine now in 2022? And here's my take on this. And like I said, I know a fair amount about this. There are people who know far more about this than I do. And this is just my opinion, and I could be wrong on some of this, but this is my observation on things. What appeared to be happening was between 2014, when the Maidan Revolution took place and the government was replaced, or however you want to characterize that, there appeared to start being, at that period of time, a kind of build-up in the Ukraine military capability. Apparently, various people were brought in to kind of help and kind of strengthen and train and so forth, that military aspect of the nation. So when the government fell, then areas of the country that were more traditionally Russian, which is the southeastern portion of the country, the east there, the Donbass, Crimea, other portions of the south, some of those areas, particularly the Donbass and Crimea, they began to apparently have concerns, or other people might say that their concerns were prodded by outside forces like Putin. They essentially wanted to have more autonomy because the thought was that if this government that was removed or whatever was kind of pro-Russian, and now it's being replaced maybe by a government that is less pro-Russian, and we have a lot of Russian affinity or people of Russian ethnic background in our areas, maybe it's better for us to kind of govern ourselves rather than have more reliance on this new government.
And let me jump in for a quick second. I think that was also where Putin was weaving in like the Russian Orthodox Church and how that's been kind of shut down in Ukraine, and we don't hear about that. And Christianity, some people are saying that that's obviously a Christianity based or Christian based church there. And it seems like, go along with what you're saying, and there's a lot of different sort of cultures, traditions, rites, if you will, of Russians or Russian culturally aligned or speaking people in Ukraine that were maybe being threatened. Is that what you're saying, Paul?
That's right. And I'm glad you said that, because my understanding was around 2012, I believe a law was enacted to kind of, in Kiev, to say, look, we're going to respect these different kind of our subcultures of our nation. And I think part of that, or a lot of that, was kind of aimed at, we're going to be open and inclusive of Russians and the Russian culture in our country. And then apparently when the government changed in 2014, they started rolling back that openness. That's my understanding of the situation. And so if you were a member of those people who might be concerned that you could be losing your rights, you could understand why you might want to reach out, or you might want to have help. And so what apparently happened was the autonomous or self-proclaimed autonomous leader of Crimea did reach out to Russia and say, look, help us out here. We want you to help us. We want to be safe here. That's kind of what precluded the annexation of Crimea. Now, again, you can look at it from a pro-Russian angle. You can look at it from an anti-Russian angle. I don't know everything that happened, but that's the general thing that occurred. That's the context. Similarly, the Donbass. The Donbass in 2014, after Maidan, essentially declared itself autonomous. And I believe in the Minsk agreements in Belarus, which I believe also took place in 2014, which Putin said the West signed but didn't intend to follow through with. That's his word, not mine. I think in that agreement was that the Donbass, the Luhansk and Donetsk, two provinces, the two oblasts, they're called, like states, they said we're going to be autonomous, and that was going to be respected. However, that was nominally done, but apparently, according to Putin, and I think others might say, it wasn't really like that. There seemed to be kind of clashes occurring all the time on the border there. And my understanding is that as we got closer to 2022, so between 2014 and 2022, that conflict between Ukraine proper and autonomous Donbass got bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you talk to people in the Russian world, and I have a bunch of friends who are, a bunch of sources that I read that are like that are from there, they will tell you that Ukraine was building up and kind of massing forces to come into Donbass right when the war broke out. On the other hand, we know Russia was massing forces on the Donbass before the war broke out. So again, I don't know exactly what happened, who's to blame or whatever, but essentially you had a build-up that was occurring there. And I think that's what happened, and that's why it took place there. People felt like this was coming, it was going to happen at some period of time, and I think Russia chose this is when we're going to get into this.
And how much do you think had to do with the whole NATO thing and what some people were saying, well, they were antagonizing, Russia and Putin? Like, how much do you think that came into the mix?
Okay, and this is where the Professor Mearsheimer story comes in. I would get, because this is beyond John and I, this is an expert in the field who is from the United States, who is a distinguished professor from the University of Chicago. I tell people, go and read his thing from 2014. He is essentially saying basically what Putin just said, which is Russia was prodded into this. This isn't just Russia's the bad people here, the bad guy here. It was NATO was taking provocative steps, which is what Putin mentioned during the interview. 5 different stages of expansion, telling Ukraine in 2008 at the Bucharest conference, yeah, we can't let you in right now, but eventually you're going to be part of us. Of course, what happened with Maidan. And people need to understand, as you mentioned with the Cuban Missile Crisis, for Russia, if they are concerned about having NATO on their borders, because that feels like a threat to them. The same way that you mentioned, like the Cuban Missile Crisis felt like a threat to us, the same way that now there's talk about a Chinese military presence, I guess, in Cuba, and we're concerned about that. So they've been clear about this over time, and they were told apparently that wasn't going to happen, that NATO was not going to put forces that close to the borders. And then in 2008, they're like, yeah, Ukraine's going to be part of NATO soon, right on the doorstep of Russia. So I think that is part of this, and I do think that aspect of it is real. However much you want to say that's part of the mix. Russia might say it's 80% of the mix. NATO might say, or somebody on the other side might say it's only 20% of the mix, but I do think it is part of the calculation here.
Okay, so what are your other takeaways? I mean, do you feel like, well, first of all, what do you think the impact is out there? How many people, let's talk about some stats, let's talk about some reaction out there. How many people watched this on Tucker Carlson's thing, on just tuckercarlson.com, and I know then it was also on Rumble and X. How many people do you think watched it, number one? And number two, what are people saying about it?
Okay, so just on X by itself, the interview is approaching 200 million views.
Wow.
Which is incredible. Yeah, just to put that into perspective, the 3 most viewed Tucker Carlson interviews ever on X were Javier Milei, president of Argentina, which has over 400 million views, President Trump, which has over 250 million views, and now Vladimir Putin, which is at 200 million views. And also to further clarify it, Tucker also put this interview on his own website. So there's probably a lot of people who just went to the website and didn't watch it on X. Whereas in the past, for Trump and for Milei, he didn't have his website up putting the videos on. So that diluted probably the amount of hits that he got on X. So this has been a massive, huge success in terms of viewership.
Definitely.
And look, my people, the people who follow me on Twitter, the people I interact with, I would say that 80% of them are like, wow, I didn't realize, I didn't know a lot of this. I'm really like, I can't, Putin is really on top of his game here. And
well, the contrast between Putin and Biden is just, it's so extreme, honestly.
Somebody flat out said, this is almost a direct quote. They simply said, after watching this interview, I don't know why I'm supposed to dislike Russia. And so that was, I mean, that's some of what you're getting here. And it's been a really fascinating thing.
Well, that's the impact. I mean, certainly mission accomplished in that respect from President Putin. And I obviously came in there with his agenda and his brief and all that type of stuff. But, again, getting away from this, our side, their side, blue, red, all, it's almost like a football game, almost like the Chiefs and the 49ers. Why should you not? I mean, again, writ large, why should you not like the Russian people? I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we were doing, business over there, and there was Glasnost, and you had Yeltsin, and he went through all these types of things. He also talked about where he broke with, Lenin and all these, different, and Stalin and all these types of stuff, if I remember correctly. And again, I don't want to get caught on 2.5 hours of history here, but. That's kind of what he was saying is that, listen, the world's complicated. You don't just get to force your way on everything. And not unlike what Simon Atiba was saying, from Africa, Today's News Africa on the show, last week, is that basically with the whole pandemic thing, you had 8, South Africa and 8 African countries that had this new strain of COVID, but then you also had it in other places around the world, but these other, I think, European places or whatever, they were still allowed to fly to America, and Africa was all shut down. And he was questioning about this, and they got shut down. And so the idea that you can kind of just impose this, everyone's going to go for EVs or whatever global thing. And again, that is kind of like the West versus the BRICS now, kind of, the petrodollar versus, the EV and the green stuff, if you will. He's saying that's just not viable. And that we do need a discussion and negotiation and to work these things out. And I think that, and he talked about the special agencies and things like that. I mean, where do you think it goes from here? I think this is very interesting. It's because the normal places, you still had Scarborough and, he's a puppet of Putin, whatever. That's my extreme paraphrase. I'm not saying that's a direct quote by any stretch, but you had, Morning Joe just, talking his little stuff. But I just feel like what you just said there, Paul, was kind of the prevailing thing, that the fact that you had kind of a quiet Paul, kind of a storm before the storm. I don't know what you want to call. I don't know what the right analogy is, but it just kind of silenced people, because I think that a lot of people came away with that kind of impression, which is, I didn't know all of this. This is a different perspective. Why are we supposed to hate the Russian people? Why aren't we working this out? Why are we still fighting? Why are we still spending all this money? And I don't think there's a great answer to that, Paul.
I agree with you. Look, you and I are old enough, and you mentioned Rambo earlier in the show. You and I are old enough to remember the days in the 80s of Red Dawn. I remember in our elementary school, we had to do nuclear drills and Russia, the evil empire, and all this stuff. And that was scary. Like, those were not fun times.
Sure.
You had to sit there and go under your desk and pretend that a nuclear weapon might be coming, all this stuff. And so it brings us back to now, which is, as you mentioned, we don't want to go back to that. I don't have to like Vladimir Putin. I don't have to agree with Vladimir Putin to want a outcome where we can avoid more conflict. Because the truth is that the conflict in Ukraine is very serious, and one wrong step could escalate things. And Putin has a nuclear arsenal, and he has a very capable military, and we all kind of want to back away from that. And I think that as much as just there was a natural reaction, like, wow, this guy's very prepared, this guy's smart in terms of watching what Putin said and how he said it, even if it was working a craft, so to speak. I think there's also the backdrop of, we don't want a wider conflict. And this person has a say in that. And so, as you mentioned, let's listen to him. Let's listen and talk about this rather than just putting more money and more material over there and seeing where it ends up.
Not only does he have a say in that, but he's also aligned with China and President Xi over there. That, and it's like, again, communism came from Russia into China and then also to other places of around the world and Southeast Asia and stuff. And so, if you have Russia and China teamed up, there's a problem, dude. If you're facing that kind of adversary and stuff like that. And like you said, this isn't Red Dawn. I mean, and remember, it was so weird is the Democratic Party used to be the anti-war party. What the heck happened to that? And it's just super weird, dude. I mean, there's some of these people out here, whether they're in the Senate or they're running for president, whatever it is, I don't know. It's almost like they never saw a war they didn't like. That's obviously, I'm exaggerating, there. But I mean, it's just like, I don't know. I mean, Senator Lindsey Graham's talking about we need to go after Iran. And I mean, Nikki Haley, like, what are we doing? To what end? Is there a plan? What's the plan? If there's a plan, let us in on the plan, because we're not hearing it. And then the idea, you can't platform Putin, you can't talk to him. What? Again, it used to be in the 80s that they were saying that Reagan's going to kill us all, World War III, Star Wars, and all this stuff. And there was the idea of which still exists today, of mutually assured destruction. If Russia and America go to war against each other, and you can probably add China right into there too, like, the whole world's done, or enough of it. Like, it's just, we're both gone. And so instead of stepping back off that ledge, there's almost a desire. It feels like sometimes potentially there's a desire for this acceleration of hostilities for what? And it just, in some weird ways, it feels like these just wackadoodle nerds took over. And listen, I was a nerd, took over. Nothing wrong, man. I'm all for it, but I mean, it's let me revise and extend that. It's just like these wackadoodles took over the government now. And you know what it's like? It's like Mad Max. You ever see Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome? You probably remember that, Paul. In Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, there was this character called, I guess two characters called Master Blaster. And there was the little guy who basically was up top, big mouth, talking all this smack. He sat atop this huge giant in armor that just smashed everybody. And so the little dude would just run his mouth and say whatever. But the little dude couldn't fight on his own. So it's like the, it's like the people like, oh yeah, you go fight this fight. It's like, it's so easy to just, have your mouth write checks that someone else's, body has to cash, if you will. I had to edit that a little bit, but when it comes down to it, you don't understand how bad it is. And there's a lot of people in Hollywood. There's a lot of people in DC that just don't get it. And we've got service members over here. We've got people over there that have catastrophic injuries, PTSD, get cranked up on painkillers and all kinds of other stuff. And it's a sad state. Like, I mean, war has to be the last resort, not the first resort. And when there's a potential profit motive in there, and again, Russell Brand, he's been kind of quasi-canceled for this, and other people, when you talk about big energy and military industrial complex and big pharma and all this type of stuff, like at what point do the interests of the elites, I mean, Lord of War, look at that movie, Lord of War, right? And war profiteering. At what point do, first of all, you need someone that's competent and capable to deal with Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin showed how competent and capable he was in that interview, in my opinion, number one. Number two, at what point did the interests of the elites diverge too dramatically from the interests of the constituents, the average constituents? And that's what MAGA's about. And that's what Vivek's saying with super PAC puppets. And this is a real conversation. This isn't about scoring political points. It's funny because I can't be too specific, but today when I was at work, someone came in and just, they weren't buying a car, whatever like that. Just happened to, really cool guy, happened to plop themselves on my desk, and we had a conversation for about an hour and a half. He was very shocked that you weren't expecting to see a super genius with 3 elite graduate degrees and all the different experiences that I've had, even at a Maserati dealership in Sarasota, right? So we started having a conversation. This guy has I won't be too specific about it, but he's got a PhD from a top 20 school, and and with a historical edge to it, and I dare say he's probably liberal, and is in the financial area and kind of pro ESG, for lack of a better term. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. And we started having a back and forth. And I had to explain to him what the real political spectrum is. And I talked about that. And we went into different things, and it was a fascinating conversation. And we both liked each other, we both respected each other and everything like that. And but it just shows you need to sit down and talk to people. And not just go for the supercilious, stereotypes and slogans and stuff like that. And this is a real world. And he walked away, and I had to go get ready for the show. And he's like, "Oh, it's great to talk to people, even if they, disagree with me." Like, well, yeah. And it's like what Paul said. He kind of walked away. You could just tell. And this is someone older than me and stuff like that. But you could just, and very smart, very successful. You could just tell. It's like, huh, I wasn't expecting that. That's a different perspective. Like, it's just like, someone just dropped a lot of knowledge on me. I don't know that I changed my mind, but I definitely have my eyes opened up to a lot of other stuff right there. And I think that's what that interview did with Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin. And clearly 100 million plus people are watching that thing. So lots more to talk about. First hour down. So much more to talk about. Super Bowl, Nikki Haley, election 2024, Trump's great week. All kinds of different things. Stay tuned for the next hour right here on Newstalk 1040, the John D. Villarreal radio show on Newstalk 1040 and live on X, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. We'll be back at 5:06. Okay, what's going on, everybody? It's me, John D. Villarreal. This is John D. Villarreal radio show here on Newstalk 1040am and also live on LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and Facebook. So much to talk about here. So much going on. I can't wait, and we're going to chop it up. Right now, we're bringing back Paula Villarreal here, but let's see. We were talking about Russia. We were talking about Putin. And the interview with Tucker Carlson, the interview literally heard around the world, no doubt about it. And a lot of people were really kind of getting into that and all the stuff that happened, the implications of that and the analysis of that. But we have a lot of other things that went down as well. And what went down over this, and I'm kind of work a little bit with some of the technical stuff here. I kind of want to those things here. Let's see if that sounds a little bit better. Maybe sounds a little bit better. We'll see. Sometimes we have to go back and forth with these things. And that wasn't the only thing that happened. We have an election right here in 2024. And right now we are very, very close to, I think, a Democratic Party freaking out. I think a Democratic Party freaking out over Biden and what's happening. We're hearing more rumors of Michelle Obama. She's running. No, she's not. I mean, there is a lot of stuff going on right here. And it is almost a panic as poll after poll is coming in, how the support from President Biden is slipping away. We had rapper Killer Mike getting in, quote unquote, Killer Mike getting into it with some of the View hosts, Sunny Holstein. I mean, you want to talk about her week. She found out that some of her ancestors, maybe it was a little different. It was a little different. Someone who's, maybe she needs to be seeking reparations from herself or something. I don't know. I mean, and I'm not making light of this. I'm not making fun of anyone, and I take this all seriously. It's a matter of course, we're entertaining here, where I'm a talk show host and all that type of stuff. But, you look at Whoopi Goldberg, Skip Gates, the whole Obama acted stupidly thing and the tricycle and the life-size tricycle and all that type of stuff. But Skip Gates of Harvard has done some very interesting digging in there. And it kind of goes back to the Putin thing, which is life and history. And, all these things are way more complicated than what we set out to be. And this whole, Marxist, cultural Marxist, oppressor storylines don't really, I said it today to the PhD that was sitting there. We were talking about stuff. We were talking about, again, I don't want to be too specific or whatnot, but, let's say that he had some interest in the Middle East, and I talked about how I've been to Israel. He's like, yeah, I've never been to Israel, and I talked about what it was like and some different things like that. And I'm like, look, it's the same thing. At some point, American Civil War, the Catholics versus the Protestants, in Ireland and in England. I mean, at some point the fighting's got to stop, and you have to reach a settlement, stuff like that. At some point, you move forward. And it's like I said, in the Alamo, I think if I may have had relatives on both sides. Do I hate myself? It just gets silly. We have to get beyond that. We need real solutions for people today. We need to be able to move forward together, and we need to all work together. And that's what this show is all about. We're peace, love, freedom, opportunity, equality for everybody. And finding the win-wins and finding how we can improve your life or try to and have a good time and all this type of stuff. I mean, Paul, am I talking crazy? What are we talking about here? I mean, this whole situation with Sunny Holstein. I mean, honestly, if I never talked about The View, I'd probably be pretty happy with that. I don't even know why. I mean, how this show became. The show used to be about all kinds of different stuff and celebrities is like a People magazine Barbara Walter interview, and now it's become some quasi. I mean, it's like SNL. SNL used to be about jokes, and now it's just like a third-rate political circuit. It's just silliness. But tell me about Trump got a lot. I mean, we had the Colorado Supreme Court ruling up in the Supreme Court, and the oral arguments just seemed like they devastated the whole Colorado case, if you will. It just seems like Trump's got momentum. Biden doesn't. A lot of these, victim, oppressor narratives are falling apart. A lot of the legal cases, the 91 legal cases against Trump seem to be falling apart. It seems like Trump's getting momentum, and it seems like Biden is losing support in the polls. Am I right or am I wrong?
I agree, and I think that's a lot of the way a lot of people see it. Let me just say something about Holstein and the View. Henry Louis Gates, who I guess you just mentioned, is the person that did the research on her family, which I didn't know that.
Yes.
Henry Louis Gates used to teach, now he's at Harvard. Henry Louis Gates used to teach at Cornell, which of course is where I went.
Yes.
And it's also where our sisters went. Well, at one point in time, Henry Louis Gates
and our brother-in-law
was the advisor. Yeah, that's right. Henry Louis Gates at one period of time was the advisor of one of our sisters. And
what? I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, that
Rose
is right.
or Christina?
Rose.
Oh my gosh!
Rose's
wow.
advisor at one period of time. Yeah, isn't that wild?
That's wild.
I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for Henry Louis Gates because he has a much more nuanced take on some of the issues than other people do. I felt bad when he got brought into the whole police acted stupidly thing with Obama, because I think people got a certain concept about Henry Louis Gates. And honestly, as someone who's studied a lot of multicultural and issues that I have in college, Henry Louis Gates was always, he was always a very balanced voice in this. So a credit to him for going out and doing some of the research and kind of figuring out some of these things, because I think that is a person who's looking for solutions rather than trying to create more issues. So I just wanted to bring that up because, yes, he's got a tie to our family. Look, I think this was a very difficult week for Biden. I mean, he had that one day on Thursday last week where the special counsel report came out, and then later was basically saying, as you mentioned, hey, we can't try this guy apparently because maybe he's an older guy and his memory might not be that good. And then he did a press conference after that news came out to try to. And
let me just, let me step in just for a second, because that point's been made. And the only reason I'm stepping in here, and I apologize, is to give a little bit of context. And I'll say this, and I'm acting as a talk show host here, not an attorney, not licensed in Florida, not practicing in Florida, no attorney, client, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, I went to law school in California, in Berkeley, and I'm still a lawyer in California. And the reason why that's relevant, because the haters make it sound like a political shot or something like that. And again, I'm speaking as a talk show host here and all that type of stuff. I'm just saying I've got some education and all that. The reason why that's relevant about, the mental state and not competent and all that type of stuff is because part of that, trying to prove that crime, if you will, is the mental state. What is your intention? What did you intend? Okay, to do with the classified? Did you intend to take them? Did you intend to resist them? Did you intend to break the law? All that type of stuff. So if I have a witness now that's not fit for trial, that can't speak to it, that I can't, put in front of a jury, that I can't get consistent answers. There's some, I'm not saying Biden, but there's some people that you would put on the stand. Hey, what color is the sky? Blue. Okay. What color is the sky? Green. What color is the sky? Purple. That could happen. Okay. If you have that kind of witness, you can't try that case. So it's not just a dig and a slam and they're trying to, this is gratuitous and they did what James Comey did. No, it's a different deal. This is a case of mental state. Did you intend to do this? Was it willful? I don't know all the elements. I didn't look up all the elements, but basically, so that's why Biden's current mental capacity to be a credible witness is relevant, in my opinion, as a talk show host. Again, not speaking as a lawyer, all that. Okay. And not licensed in Florida. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When you brought that up to me off air, I'm glad that you did, because I didn't know that. But basically what you're talking about, and my rephrasing of what you're saying is President Biden a reliable narrator of his own events?
There you go.
Because if he has supposedly, if he has possibly a faulty memory, well, then maybe he did something and he just didn't remember he did it. And then again, that would take away bad intent. He just might have forgotten about it. And that's, I think, what you said. I think that's what the special counsel was kind of going to, which is, look, you can't really, as you said, you can't put a person on the stand in that circumstance. It just doesn't. I mean, that's my
Yeah,
opinion.
it doesn't work. I mean, there's people that have said that.
Right.
I believe there's people that have said they've killed people that they didn't do it. They just lost they lost capacity. There's some people that think they're in Disney World right now and they're at home. There's some people that forget the names of their own kids. They kind of know that they're related.
Yeah.
I mean, there's legion of stories about that. So if you've got someone that's a perfect way to say it, that can't credibly narrate their own history or be a competent witness to the mental state, it just doesn't work. And it's not just a political slam or whatever like that, nor is it a dodge. If that's what her thinks, then and that's the prosecutor and the special prosecutor, then that's a judgment call. Now, you may agree, you may disagree, but it's a very relevant point. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, so that came out, and I agree. I think that's really important because, as you said, that isn't necessarily a shot at Biden. It's just kind of an assessment, and it just changes the perspective on things. I agree with you, and I'm glad that you brought that up now and before. Also, so after that happened, then Biden, as you mentioned, had a press conference where he brought up President of Mexico, and while he erroneously brought up the President of Mexico while trying to talk about the President of Egypt, and so that kind of made it look like the special counsel was maybe really was hit the nail on the head with his assessment. But of course, as much as that might help Biden legally, it's not going to help him politically. And so that was a very, very difficult day. I believe somebody in the New York Times, writer, I don't know who it was. Right. I believe some writer.
And it also helped. I'm sorry, very, very quickly. It also tremendously benefited President Trump, because now you've got this thing over here where Biden had classified documents. You had the pictures where they're by the Corvette, they're out in the open, and then the other office building at the Penn Center, Biden Center at Penn and stuff like that, when Biden was U.S. Senator and Vice President and could not declassify. And then you had a locked, secure, I mean, again, I don't remember everything. You had a situation where everything was together in Mar-a-Lago. President Trump was president, could have declassified stuff, Presidential Record Acts, all those things applied to Trump, did not apply to Biden, and yet you went FBI pre-dawn raid, or at Mar-a-Lago, and you've got Biden just we're dropping the prosecution. Politically, it looks really bad, Paul.
It looks terrible. And today, Trump was in Fort Pierce, Florida, doing a hearing about that case. So the timing couldn't have been worse, in my opinion, for Biden, because you're off the hook and Trump isn't, and that just doesn't it gives people concern about two-tiered justice system. So that was Biden's that week, and that's only one day out of it. But I believe somebody in the New York Times, which of course is not exactly a conservative newspaper, somebody apparently wrote an op-ed today saying, look, I think they were calling for Biden to step down and step out, and because of concerns like this. The polling by the NBC poll came out last week, and I think said 76%, including 54% of Democrats, have concerns about President Biden's physical and mental health in serving a second term.
And let's hammer on that.
This is kind of.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Well, let's hammer on that for a second. So I want to really emphasize that point that you said right there, and then you finish the thought. If you can't have it both ways. Either the special counsel potentially, hypothetically, I'm not alleging anything, I'm just saying hypothetically, logically, you let Biden off the hook. This was the dodge. We're not going after you. It's okay, Biden. You're cool. We're going full blast on Trump. Same justice system, Attorney General Garland. We're going full blast on Trump. But Biden, you're off the hook, even though you really could stand trial, and we can do all that. Hunter Biden laptop, you can do. You're off the hook. Or it was an accurate assessment. Biden can't be a credible narrator of his own story, as Paul says. He can't be a reliable witness. He's not mentally competent to testify right now. If he's not mentally competent to testify on what he did, how is he mentally competent to be president? And I think everyone intrinsically understands that. And then, and you see this right now in the Real Clear Politics poll, and I'll turn it right back over to you. If you, Paul, you have right now, okay, at January 27th, the prediction markets, actually, I'll go even farther than that. February 6th, less than a week ago, Trump 44%, Biden 33%, Nikki Haley, Michelle Obama 8.2%, Nikki Haley 4.4%, Gavin Newsom 3.4%, Kennedy 3.3%. Fast forward to today. Trump 44.4%. He's gone up. Joe Biden went off a cliff, 27.2%. So within a week, Biden went from 33.8 to 27.2. Obama, not Michelle Obama, 9.3. Gavin Newsom shoots up 8% from like 3 something. Haley 3.2. Kamala Harris 3.0. You can see almost everyone but Biden. Biden is plummeting, dude. And Trump's going up. The people, Paul, I mean, regardless of what the special prosecutor did, it seems, Paul, that the American people, the electorate out there, the voters, the people that are being polled are making a decision. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I saw a betting market today that had Trump at 52%.
Wow.
And Biden at 26%. Basically double Biden. I mean, that's unbelievable. I mean, not too long ago, a couple months ago, Trump was down. Now he's up 2x. And that's ridiculous. And you mentioned Michelle Obama. David Axelrod, of course, the strategist for Barack Obama, and for his campaigns, and I believe worked in the White House, essentially came out yesterday on the Michael Smirnikosh show on CNN and all but said Michelle Obama is not running in 2024. And so that, of course, is going to take her numbers down in the betting markets. And if you're the Democrats who are possibly holding out hope for that, now what? Who? Gavin Newsom? Gretchen Whitmer? I don't know. I mean, but I think in any great hope, or if you really thought somebody might come in, Michelle Obama would be the natural person. And they're essentially saying, we're not doing that. So here you have Joe Biden falling down massively in the polling. Michelle Obama's not going to come in and save you. Who is going to come in and save you? You and I both said, we said it many times on the show, if the race is going to become non-competitive, it's going to favor Trump. And that's what we're starting to see right now. And I don't know if there's a way for Joe Biden to come back on this.
And not only that, but I mean, we keep having all these other names floated out there and stuff like that. And we talked about it before as well. Like, dude, you're pretty much out of time. With all the hype and the celebrity and the build-up and the fundraising that particularly the Democrats do, and the cult of personality and this and look at this. Look at the Taylor Swift thing. Oh, he's going to endorse President Biden. It could turn the election. This has been a ramp up for what, like 7-8 months, 6 months. You know what I mean? With article after article after article, dude. We are 8 months out, less than 8 months out of this election, way less than that of the nomination. You've got to get on ballots. You got to. I mean, I don't even know. Primaries are already ticking off the list here. So who do you think they're going to put it? How do you think they're going to put that person in? And then do you think they're going to be able to put that person in without any political backlash? Like, dude, there's this fantasy. It's all falling apart, and you see Democrats freaking out. Paul, freaking out.
Yeah, they are freaking out. I'm seeing it. What I'm noticing, and any other people are noticing on Twitter, is a large increase in bot activity. And you and I both know that there's a lot of, in our experience, just anecdotally, right, there seems to be, when there's a lot of usage of a lot of
astroturfers out there.
Astroturfing.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say.
Potentially.
Look, I think that's right. We're not alleging anything. I think what is starting to happen is, of course, you're starting to see the panic, but again, I don't know what the calculation was in terms of Michelle Obama. I personally don't think she ever wanted to run. That's just my own feeling. That has been said before by Valerie Jarrett, who's, of course, an Obama confidant. I think what you're starting to see now is Democrats who have political ambition saying, you know what, I think I'm going to sit out this cycle.
Right.
And let's wait until the next cycle. I think it's starting to just kind of make amends with that and say, maybe it's time to start writing this one off. Which is what
DeSantis and Haley should have done, in my opinion, as well. And I mean, I guess it depends what your goals are. Well, we're going to see where Haley ends up and how that all goes. I think politically her career is very damaged, stuff like that. DeSantis, I think I think the way he got out, he salvaged some stuff there, and I said that. I think he's okay. I'm not maybe not great, but I think Vivek is positioned himself phenomenally. I think that he was getting a little questionable. I think you've got people chanting his name for VP now, and he's out there doing full blast surrogate for Trump. Vivek is very, very well positioned. I think DeSantis is somewhere between a Vivek and Senator Cruz when he got out. So whereas Nikki Haley is rapidly approaching the Kasich situation, although I do feel like somehow we're going to find Nikki Haley on Fox News or some corporate board, or none of that would surprise me. We'll see what it is, but at the same time, I don't want to be mean and stuff like that, but I don't, again, Trump has called her bird brain. And I just feel like she hasn't acquitted herself super well over the last month. I would say ever since Iowa, it's been going downhill pretty fast for Nikki Haley. Would you agree or disagree with that, Paul?
I do, and I don't know I don't know what she was thinking. And I know our guest professor Larry Schweikert said last week that he believes that she knows her political future is kind of coming to an end, and so she's making friends and looking for her next board seat on the board, and so on and so forth. I don't know if that's true, but I agree with you. She has really not helped herself with how everything has been handled. I mean, this is obviously not going anywhere, in my opinion. I mean, we saw what happened in Nevada. What are you doing?
What are you doing?
What's happening here?
Well, and if that's the case, if she's written her, this is all hypothetical opinion, speculation. If Nikki Haley knows she can't win, but she's positioned, is she being a willful tool of the Democrats? Is she being a willful political saboteur, if you will, hurting Trump, hurting the MAGA, hurting the Republicans in order to line up her things or ingratiate herself to the left or the money or Wall Street or whatever it is? And then it goes back to what Vivek says, a super PAC puppet. Some people that will, send your children to die to get a bigger house. Now, that's a very super strong charge. We're not saying that. I'm not alleging that or in any way, shape, or form. That's my paraphrase of what I thought Vivek said in one of the later debates, Paul.
Look, we've talked about this before, but we've had questions about politicians down your way, south there, and where they're coming from, and are they looking for a step up at the expense of others?
Okay, lots more to talk about here on Newstalk 1040 AM of the greater Tampa Bay area. This is the John D. Villarreal radio show on Newstalk 1040 AM, live on X, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Stay tuned. Last segment coming up, players. 6 minutes. We'll see you soon.
Hi, this is Dave Anthony from the Fox News Rundown. Heard here weekday mornings 5 to 6, and then again 8 to 9 on Newstalk 1040 each morning.
Okay, we're back. Last segment here, the John D. Villarreal Radio Show here on Newstalk 1040 AM, live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and X. We've been talking about Nikki Haley, election 2024. We've been talking about all kinds of stuff, joined by Paul Villarreal. We kind of have to talk about, where we're at with the election right now, because honestly, like Trump is like looking better and better. I mean, a lot of people are saying that the Democrats know. I've even saw, I can't remember the article. I saw an article where it's like the Democrats know that they're going to lose, and so it's now rush to like get all their stuff in and Biden Trump before he gets in there and stuff. And then again, you've got Charlie Kirk and others are saying that like, hey, you know what? This is going to be hard. Don't get too excited yet. And we saw it before. We saw it where in 2022 it was supposed to be a red wave, and that didn't materialize. Now we did take the House and all that. But I also think that like it does a lot of this does come back to, I mean, in a way it's 8 short months, and in a way it's 8 long months for President Biden. I mean, he could be, we don't know what's going to happen. Secretary Austin, Defense Secretary Austin, unfortunately seems to be having some health situations, and that has evolved over the last month. I mean, who knows? Paul, let's bring you back in here right now. And then some of them are trying to make Nikki Haley, honestly, one of them trying to make age the issue for Trump. Where do we stand right now with this election? I mean, it looks like Trump is in very good shape. It looks like Team MAGA is in good shape. A lot to do, but how do you see the next few months and unfolding here in regards to Trump and all that? And then there's even rumors that Mitch McConnell, he may be a little shaky there. We had the Kerry Lake stuff like that. Some people, Mike Lee today, Senator Mike Lee out of Utah has called for McConnell to step aside. Talk to me about the future of the Republican Party, how strong Trump is, what you see for 2024 and with Trump and all that.
I think that it's probably best to look at the election more in the way that Charlie Kirk is, which is it's probably going to be pretty difficult, even if you wouldn't think that it was going to be that way.
Okay.
I say that because for a state like here in Pennsylvania, the Democrats have a significant edge in terms of turning out the mail-in vote. They have just a great machine at doing that, and the margins that they have achieved in that in 2020 and 2022 are massive.
And the early voting and all that.
That's exactly right. The early voting, mail-in voting, absentee, etc. They are getting such big margins, and they know exactly how to get this done. They bring in canvassers. They send you. I know this because I've seen this. They send things out months in advance saying, do you want a mail-in ballot? Have you requested one? And so forth. Then people come to your door and canvass and say, hey, have you done this? Whatever. The GOP that I've seen doesn't do any of that.
Well, and I'll say this real quick. I'll say this real quick. The reason why Paul knows this is Paul used to be a Democrat, so he's still getting these mail and stuff like that. And my wife Salma, she's a U.S. citizen now, American citizen. This is the first election she can vote in, and she's been getting a lot of stuff and whatnot. And so and also, I mean, I even get it on my cell phone all the time. I get it on my cell phone where it's like, I guess someone has my number. I don't know. Like they've got, I've got all kinds of different names out there. Apparently, well, not really, but I mean, like they have some bad information, but there's enough information out there. But the majority of the texts that I get are from Gavin Newsom. I just was getting something today. Some representative running for something out there in California, because I got like a California number. And it's just nonstop. So that, yes, to your point, Paul, the Democrats are way on top of this.
Yeah, if we want to use a Super Bowl analogy, I think that Trump or the Republicans have the better team. They have the better personnel. But the Democrats have the better playbook. They have the better coaching. And so that's kind of what you're dealing with here. Sometimes coaching can catch up to talent. And so I do think it's still going to be a lot of work to be done in order to get the victory. I will tell you this. If Trump wins Pennsylvania, I think there's no question he's going to win the election. And I just saw a poll yesterday that had him up 8 points here in Pennsylvania. Now, recently we saw a poll that had him 8 points down here in Pennsylvania. So I'm not sure what to believe, but look, overall, I think you have to be happy with where you are if you're President Trump. But it is, again, the Democrats have a system. They have a plan, and they're good at carrying out that plan. And the Republicans don't have as good of a plan. Though I will say this, in 2020, President Trump, his team took a long time to get started here in Pennsylvania. Like, Biden's team got a significant head start here. Well, President Trump was here for an NRA event just a few days ago. So I don't think they're going to be content to sit back and let that happen again. And that's a good sign for Trump, no question.
Okay. And so if you were to say, like, I mean, do you want to sort of make a prediction? Like, if you were to say in the elections held today, you think Trump wins it?
Yeah, I do. I would say, look at those betting markets. I think they're a pretty good thing. I would call it, I would say maybe 60-40 Trump, 55-45. 60-40 is probably more realistic because Biden is struggling right now.
Biden is struggling. Also, I think, part of it, the conversation I had today, but also, you see in the news and you see some of how Biden is trying to kind of, walk the tightrope. But I think that they have a very difficult time talking about the Middle East, the war over there in Israel and Gaza and stuff like that. And I think that matters in places like Michigan and Florida, a lot of places, honestly. But particularly like some of these, swing states where you've got, Representative Tlaib and stuff like that. I mean, they don't know. It's funny because I saw the line. I was on Bloomberg and I can't remember it exactly. But it was something like, criticism of Netanyahu, but total support of Israel. It was like, it just didn't make sense, right? I mean, so and yet, like, it's just, I don't think they know. So I think there's unclear messaging and I think there's unclear policy. And I think there's maybe one thing that's happening, to cameras and another thing that may be happening. I don't know. I don't know if there's a disconnect there. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's a very, very complicated situation, very serious situation. And obviously, we're, very much in support of Israel and democracy and our close ally over there. At the same time, you can't have collective punishment. And at the same time, this war's dragged on for a long time, and it's affecting people's lives and families and the economy and everything like that. And again, same thing. Where's the way out of here? Plus, I mean, you've got a partner over there, Netanyahu, that I don't think that he's listening to what we're saying. I don't think he's stopping. And so then what? Are you signing on for all that? I mean, it just that issue is a very, very tough issue, Paul. That issue right there can be extremely impactful. And you don't want to be political, and we're not being political with it whatsoever, but that has political implications, let alone all the stuff which we've seen. And that set the whole thing off with the Ivy League stuff. MIT, Penn, Harvard, Claudine Gate, and all this. All these contradictions and all these sort of issues that, are just kind of bubbling up, whether it's DEI or the Hollywood overreach or, and we see what's going on with Marvel. We see Elon Musk against Disney and Gina Carano and stuff like that. So, I mean, what I'm saying is that the inherent contradictions of the left and how the left will always turn on even themselves is really coming home to roost, if you will. And we have another 8 months of this. And I don't know, if the political, I think that this could be some serious political impact, all of it with President Biden. Does that make sense?
It does. Look, the last 48 hours, I think, have given a perfect snapshot of what you're talking about. During the Super Bowl, Robert Kraft, who is the owner of the New England Patriots, ran, I believe, 2 ads that were for his foundation, which is something like Stop Anti-Semitism Now or something like that. I don't remember the name of it. But, so that's coming from the one angle on what's going on. However, also over in Israel, I guess that Israel went into Rafah and apparently pulled out 2 different hostages. So they're happy about that. Apparently, people think that some negative aspects took place while that operation was underway. So there's backlash about that. Then there was leaked out that Biden supposedly said something negative again about Netanyahu. So now today he came out and met with, I believe, the king of Jordan, and reporters are shouting at him, "Hey, is Netanyahu taking your advice?" So that's just, as you said, that issue just keeps going. And I don't, that's causing a lot of strain in the coalition. You mentioned, what about the Republican leadership? We have gotten word, apparently this week, that Ronna McDaniel might be stepping down as the RNC chairwoman. And that apparently might take place after the South Carolina primary. Who's going to fill her role if that happens? There's a man's name named Michael Whatley, who is the chairman of the North Carolina GOP. Apparently Trump likes him. Now, I guess it came out from Maggie Haberman a couple hours ago that Trump might support his daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, to be the RNC co-chair. So the Republicans are having an opportunity now to possibly shuffle the deck on their leadership. We've seen Kevin McCarthy go. Ronna McDaniel might be going. And as you mentioned, what about Mitch McConnell? Maybe he's next on in terms of changing the old guard.
Well, and again, I want to put a time component on that too, which is to say that the thing with the Israeli thing and the war over there, I think so many Americans and Republicans have stood behind Israel and full-throated response and all that after the tragedy and the horrific events of October 7th. But that we've got October, November, December, January, February. We're over 5 months into this. Okay. The longer this goes, and we've got Gaza that has been destroyed. We had like food, water, power being blockaded, if you will. I believe, I could be wrong. I mean, if I make, again, we're not afraid to handle some controversial stuff here. This is the news, and if I make a mistake, then I apologize, and we'll revise and extend. But King Abdullah of Jordan talked about in Cairo, talked about collective, can't have collective punishment and all this. There was things at the World Court, I believe, in The Hague. There's been a lot of criticism. There's been a lot of Hezbollah, others. You've got the Houthis in Yemen that have been involved here. We've been striking Iran-backed people in Syria. How far does this go? The longer this goes, the less defensible it becomes politically for certain sides. Now, you may agree, you may disagree with that. I'm just telling you, it's no different than Ukraine. Okay, so people like sometimes you can't see it if that's your thing and you're in it. If Ben Shapiro, let's just do and all of a sudden Ben Shapiro, I was wrong about Trump, right? You're getting over your skis on some of these things, and it's. To some people, what happened is an existential threat, and you can understand that. But then you have President Putin of Russia laying out his case. Okay, and I'm not saying they're equivalent, but I'm just saying that you need to be logically consistent. And what I'm saying politically is the longer this war goes, the more hard feelings there's going to be by those on the left and the Palestinians and the Palestinian Americans and the Arab Americans and a lot of people that are sympathetic to the cause of the Palestinians and the people in Gaza who think that this is some kind of form of collective punishment or whatever like that, and that a lot of those people are Democratic voters or they were Democratic voters. At the same time, can Biden, and at first there were some people that back off of support from Netanyahu and back off support from Israel. Absolutely not, because there's you can't that politically, you can't do that. So this creates a harder and harder position. And you think you're going to be personally criticizing Netanyahu, but we totally support IDF in Israel. I just don't see that as being anywhere near effective politically. And I'm just talking as a political analyst. I'm not saying one side. I'm not taking any sides in this. I'm not saying anyone's right or wrong, whatever like that. My policy has been clear, which is to say that, war's bad for everybody. Self-defense for sure. We are full blast supporter of Israel. I've been a supporter of Netanyahu. I've interviewed Danny Danon. I've been at my wife and family are Israeli on my wife's side and stuff like that. I've been in Israel, all that type of stuff. At the same time, 5 terms is a lot for a prime minister with power corrupts, absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. I do not know the intricacies of politics over there, whatever. President Netanyahu or Prime Minister Netanyahu is a former military person. What happened on October 7th was a major, major deal. There either was like some major failure of intelligence and security or something else like that, or maybe, who knows? There's only a couple logical things that are possible. Or maybe the defense and all that is not as great as it was hyped up to be. I said it before. Same thing with the U.S. It's not 1980 anymore. It's not 1967 anymore. It's not 1948 anymore. There is a lot more parity in terms of cyber capability, intelligence agency capability, weapon capability, all this type of stuff. You can't fight everybody, especially if you're a small country like Israel and stuff like that. But at the same time, you can't have, all of it's true. The Palestinians shouldn't be electing Hamas, a terrorist organization, to run their country and stuff like that. And think that's going to work out good. That's not going to work out good. There's no way for that to work out. How would that work out good? The PLO didn't do. And Arafat, how did they really help out the Palestinian people? Some people would totally disagree with me and stuff like that. And again, let's be very clear. Not that I'm some expert, but people would consider, my wife's actually Aramaic, but some people would consider her Palestinian Arabic. Or Palestinian Arab, okay? And so, you cannot have collective punishment. There's millions of people that were in Gaza. What, they're all terrorists? They're all guilty? No. You can't have that. That is an atrocity. And both sides have their, here's our, horrific pictures, and here's our other horrific pictures. Okay, so what happened October 7th? But how long does it continue? What if America just kept carpet bombing Vietnam? And we did some horrible stuff in Vietnam. And this is no disrespect to the Vietnam veterans, and I know a lot of them, and my uncle's one of them, okay? But I don't think that was a shining badge of honor for America. And it was a crime and a shame, political crime and a shame, if you will, because then the Vietnam vets, the poor veterans that came over here that were following orders, that punk out, that shame was pushed onto them. And that's not right. It's the people from up above that made the decisions that did that. So we're all living in the world together, and we have to figure out how to get this done. So no, yes, you have to have security. Yes, it's fine to make sure Israel's secure. Yes, we should, you should defeat terrorism. No, you shouldn't elect a terrorist organization to run your country. But at the same time, you can't cut off food, power, water, bulldoze buildings, take out hospitals, and have millions of people, on the run or whatever that it is. That's not good. And then what? What happens if Hezbollah comes in? How long does this go? I do not have, this is so ridiculously complicated. I've probably made dozens of mistakes right now, and I apologize, and we'll amend my remarks later as need be. But it just goes to show you just a sliver of how complicated this issue is. And it's not been talked about that way. But what's funny is for the first 5 weeks, I talked about it on this show. And that's why you listen to John D. Villarreal radio show here on Newstalk 1040. And instead of, Ruben and others, let's go. And all this, that's not what they said. But I can't remember the comments, but they were pretty, in my opinion, pretty inflammatory of just like, hey, we're going to show them, and all this type of stuff. And I had a more nuanced perspective on it. Not to say that, but it was like, not to be in a soapbox, but it's like, look, this is problems here, dude. You can't do it. You can't do it this way. And over time, Tucker Carlson, Megan, a lot of others have come to my way of thinking. I'm not saying they saw my stuff, but all of a sudden now I'm right where a lot of people are. because it's a complicated issue. And that just highlights how ridiculously complicated it is politically and how it can get even worse. This is another event that can spin out of control for Biden that he has no control over because Netanyahu is the one in charge. He can't say no publicly to Netanyahu, not now. And so both of those coalitions are big coalitions on the Democratic Party, and you can't square that circle. So we need a peace. Now, President Trump talked about how you talked about the difference in leadership. President Trump talked about, Paul, real quick here, they'll bring you in for final comments and we wind down, how he made the NATO leaders, Germany and others, step up and participate in terms of their NATO funding. And they asked him something like, you need to fund us, blah, back and forth, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, well, won't you defend us if Russia attacks? He's like, not if you don't pay your money. They're like, what? And then all of a sudden they started paying some money. So Trump, you can say whatever you want about Trump, but Abraham Accords, moving, the embassy, and again, you can say that was wrong, that was right, but it was a leadership move. It was he put his money where his mouth is, if you will, because a bunch of presidents have been talking about doing this. He finally did it. And, the NATO Accords, Trump is able to make deals. We didn't have, we had low inflation. We had low unemployment. We had a big stock market. We had a growing economy. We didn't have any foreign wars. We got out of this stuff. And then Biden, we've had Ukraine, Afghanistan, whatever's going on with Yemen, stuff like that, Israel and Gaza. The leadership's not there. And we have a special counsel that just says that this person the President Biden is not competent to stand trial. That's a shocking claim. I'm not a doctor. I'm not the special counsel. I have no idea. I'm not making that claim. I'm saying that's what the special counsel said, in my opinion, it's a talk show. Final comments, Paul.
Well, you mentioned the Vietnam War, so I'll bring it back to that. Politically, the issues involved with that. Well, in the last 70 years, there's only one American president who didn't run for re-election, and that was Lyndon Johnson, and it was because of the fallout of the Vietnam War.
There you go. Good point.
So that's the type of thing we're talking about here that could be affecting President Biden, and that situation is growing, and I'm sad I don't know when it's going to stop.
Listen, this is a tragedy, and it's the same thing, which is to say that yes, Israel's our top ally. Yes, they have to have security. No, yes, you have to defeat terrorists. Absolutely, like that. But what's the end game? How long is this going to go? Who's benefiting now? I've heard reports that the Israeli economy is really damaged because you got people that are called they're not working. They've been called up with the IDF and stuff like that. War's a bad thing. Israel's a small country. This is no joke. If this conflict's, gosh help us. Hopefully this conflict is not wide. We have to find peace here, peace and security, right? But we also have to have non-collective punishment, and we have to have the rights and stuff. And there was Netanyahu's they've been talking about 2 states. Listen, thousands of years. You've had all kinds of Camp David. You've had all kinds of stuff. We're not going to solve it here within 2 minutes on the John D. Villarreal radio show here on Newstalk 1040. But this is a super complicated issue, which goes right back to we need leadership in Washington. This isn't just about left, right in a football game. These are real jobs that take real competency. It's a complicated world out there, but I believe in you, and I'm an optimist. I think it'll all work out, hopefully. But we appreciate everybody out there. We're for peace, love, freedom, opportunity, equality for everyone. This is the John D. Villarreal radio show here on Newstalk 1040 AM at Greater Tampa Bay area. Also live on X, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate Paul. Appreciate you. Stay blessed. And stay tuned for next week. We'll be right back at you. Have a happy Valentine's Day. See you next week.